Welcome back to the podcast. Today we're talking about something that affects every single one of us, decision making. From small everyday choices like what to eat or what to watch, to major life decisions that can shape our future. We're constantly making choices. Some people seem very confident when making decisions, while others spend hours or even days thinking about different possibilities. So today we're going to explore how people make decisions, why some choices are so difficult, and whether there's really such a thing as a perfect decision.
I think this topic is more relevant than ever because we're surrounded by choices. Sometimes I feel like having too many options actually makes life harder. Just yesterday, I spent nearly 20 minutes trying to choose a movie. There were so many options on different streaming platforms that I couldn't decide. Eventually, I got tired and watched nothing at all. It sounds funny, but I think many people can relate to that experience. The more choices we have, the more difficult it can become to make a decision.
That's a great example of what psychologists call decision fatigue. After making lots of decisions throughout the day, our brains become tired and even simple choices start to feel exhausting. But let's talk about bigger decisions. Would you say you're generally good at making decisions? Personally, I think I'm reasonably good at it, but only after I've had enough time to think things through. I rarely make important decisions quickly. I usually weigh the pros and cons, consider different outcomes, and sometimes even write things down before reaching a conclusion.
I'm quite similar, especially when it comes to major life choices. Small decisions don't usually bother me, but big ones can keep me awake at night. For example, when I had to choose what to study at university, I felt completely torn between different options. I kept wondering whether I should choose something practical, something I enjoyed, or something that would lead to a stable career. Looking back, that was probably one of the most stressful decisions I've ever had to make because I felt like it would affect my entire future.
That's interesting because many young people experience exactly the same thing. When you're 18 or 19, people expect you to make decisions that could influence the next 10 or 20 years of your life. At that age, many people don't even know themselves very well yet. That's one reason why advice from family members often becomes important. Which brings us to an interesting question. Why do some parents make important decisions for their children instead of allowing them to choose for themselves?
I think most parents do it because they genuinely want the best for their children. They have more life experience and they want to protect their children from making mistakes. Sometimes they've already faced similar situations and believe they know what the right choice is. For example, a parent might encourage a child to study medicine, engineering, or law because those careers are often seen as stable and respectable. From the parent's perspective, they're simply trying to help their child build a secure future.
I can understand that point of view, but I also think there can be negative consequences when parents make too many decisions. If children are never given the opportunity to make choices for themselves, they may struggle to become independent adults. Decision making is a skill, and like any skill, it improves with practice. If someone grows up with other people constantly deciding everything for them, they may lack confidence when they eventually need to make important decisions on their own.
Exactly. In fact, making mistakes is often one of the best ways to learn. Nobody develops good judgment without experiencing a few failures along the way. Sometimes parents are so focused on protecting their children from mistakes that they accidentally prevent them from learning valuable life lessons. Of course, children need guidance, but they also need opportunities to take responsibility for their own choices and experience the consequences, whether those consequences are positive or negative.
That leads to another question people often ask. When making important decisions, should we follow our heart or listen to advice from other people? Personally, I think it's important to listen to different perspectives because other people can often spot risks or opportunities that we've overlooked. Friends, family members, teachers, and colleagues may provide useful insights. However, at the end of the day, we're the ones who have to live with the results of our decisions.
I completely agree. I've seen people make choices mainly to satisfy other people's expectations. Sometimes they choose a career, a university, or even a lifestyle because someone else thinks it's the right path. The problem is that external approval doesn't always lead to personal happiness. That's why I believe it's important to gather advice from others, but still make up your own mind. Listening to people is valuable, but giving away control of your future is a different matter entirely.
Another thing that makes decision-making complicated today is the amount of information available to us. In the past, people often had fewer choices and less information. Nowadays, before making a decision, we can read hundreds of reviews, watch videos, compare options, and search for expert opinions. On the surface, that sounds helpful. More information should lead to better decisions, right? But in reality, it's not always that simple.
Exactly. Sometimes people suffer from information overload. There are so many opinions online that it becomes difficult to know which sources are trustworthy. Instead of helping us decide, the extra information can create confusion. I've met people who spent weeks researching a purchase, a course, or a career path because they were afraid of making the wrong choice. At some point, you have to accept that no decision comes with a guarantee.
Social media has probably made this even more challenging. We're constantly exposed to other people's achievements, lifestyles, and success stories. When you see someone getting promoted, starting a successful business, or traveling around the world, it's easy to start questioning your own decisions. You begin wondering whether you're on the right path or whether you've missed a better opportunity somewhere else.
That's true, but I think we need to remember that social media usually shows the highlights rather than reality. People tend to share their successes far more often than their failures. As a result, we compare our everyday lives to someone else's best moments. That comparison can create unnecessary pressure and make us doubt decisions that were actually right for us. Sometimes confidence comes from focusing on your own goals rather than comparing yourself with everyone else.
Let's move on to the topic of risk taking. Some people are naturally cautious, while others are willing to take significant risks in pursuit of new opportunities. Do you consider yourself a risk taker? I have to admit that I'm usually quite careful. I like having a plan, and I prefer to understand the possible consequences before making a major decision.
I'm very similar. I wouldn't describe myself as someone who makes impulsive decisions. However, I do think that some of the biggest opportunities in life require us to step out of our comfort zone. Starting a business, moving to another country, changing careers, or learning a completely new skill often involves uncertainty. The key difference, in my opinion, is between taking a calculated risk and making a reckless decision.
That's an important distinction. A calculated risk involves preparation. You've done your research, considered the possible outcomes, and developed a plan for dealing with challenges. A reckless decision, on the other hand, often happens when someone acts without thinking about the consequences. Successful people are often described as risk takers, but many of them actually spend a great deal of time planning before taking action.
Absolutely. And when we look back at our lives, many of the decisions we're most proud of probably involve some degree of uncertainty. Few worthwhile opportunities come with complete certainty. Whether it's applying for a job, starting a project, or moving somewhere new, there is usually a chance of failure. But there is also a chance for growth, learning, and success. Sometimes avoiding every risk can be just as limiting as taking too many.
I think there are definitely things I would do differently. I might learn certain skills earlier or take advantage of opportunities that I ignored at the time. However, I wouldn't completely change my path because every experience, including the difficult ones, contributed to who I am today. Looking back, I realized that some of my biggest mistakes ended up teaching me the most valuable lessons.
I feel the same way. It's easy to focus on regrets, but life is rarely a straight line. Most of us are doing the best we can with the information we have at the time. Instead of searching for the perfect decision, perhaps the goal should be making thoughtful choices, learning from our experiences, and remaining flexible when circumstances change.
That's a great conclusion. Maybe the most important thing to remember is that decision making isn't about predicting the future perfectly. None of us can do that. It's about gathering information, considering different perspectives, trusting our judgment, and then moving forward. Some decisions will work out better than others, but every choice teaches us something. And in the long run, that ability to learn and adapt may be more valuable than making the perfect decision every time.
Well said. That's all for today's episode. We hope this discussion has given you something to think about and perhaps helped you reflect on some of your own decisions.
Take care, everyone. And remember, sometimes the hardest part isn't making the decision itself, it's having the courage to move forward once you've made it. See you next time.